Spider-Man is one of the most beloved heroes of all time, and you know what that means, having to fight a load of other heroes for fan service. But which fights should Spidey probably have lost but actually came out on top? That's what we're exploring today. Greetings Nerd Squad, I'm Connor Monroe and this is the top 10 most powerful superheroes who lost to Spider-Man. Let's do it. And at 10, Peter Parker. With Miles having all the powers of Spider-Man with a couple extra to boot, it's bound to be expected that he would eventually surpass his idol/mentor Peter Parker. However, we expected it after some training and a lot of experience. We see this come to pass though in the pages of Spider-Man. Miles and Peter run into each other in costume and they don't know each other's identity. So Pete demands that Miles unmask himself and, state his name. However, they get into a bit of an altercation because of that. And thanks to the help of a few additions Miles made to his suit, including stingers that cause paralysis and electrified webbing, Miles does end up gaining the upper hand and knocking Peter down, which I have to say shouldn't really have been the case. Like, they should have shown us that the more experienced Spider-Man could still win, since experience is the real currency of the world, but nonetheless, it happened, so it goes on the list. And at 9, Deadpool. Deadpool is such a charismatic character that you'd think he'd pair perfectly with the quick-witted, constantly quipping Webhead. However, in one episode of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, Peter was introduced to the one and only Wade Wilson, the merc with a red leather-covered mouth. Kinky. The fight quickly turns into Peter and Wade literally slapping each other, so it's safe to say that this is bound to be interesting. However, Deadpool somehow pulls Peter into his mind, turning the fights from a fisticuffs to Deadpool hunting a Spider-Man whale with a harpoon, a la Lewis Brinley, and getting trampled with giant animals and verbal puns that caused physical harm. Deadpool is literally a bard using vicious mockery in this scene, and I don't think that anyone can fight me on that point. Straight up, this whole episode is hilarious, and the fact that Deadpool can't say the word kill just makes me think about YouTube censors. So it's relatable too. And at 8, Fantastic Four. In the Amazing Spider-Man issue 1, we get thrown right into the action with a crossover with the Fantastic Four. But not a fantastic crossover, since the group was actually in the midst of fighting Spider-Man. Spidey took on all 4 members at once, webbing them all up in a way that disabled their powers, including basically hog-tying Mr. Fantastic. The thing is, no pun intended, this fight was all Spider-Man's fault. He wanted to join the Fantastic Four, and figured the best way to convince them to let that happen was to infiltrate their base and kick their asses. However, he learns that joining the team won't actually make him any money, so he called them cheap and leaves, which I find utterly hilarious. He hit the Human Torch with a baseball bat made of web, for crying out loud. How is a 5th member supposed to join the Fantastic Four? Wouldn't it be like the Fantastic Five at that point? Or is Ben getting kicked out? He can go be somebody's pet rock, right? And at 7, Iron Man. Iron Man and Spider-Man may have a father-stepson-like bond in the MCU, however, things in the comments are much more professional than that, aside from the Iron Spider storyline, I guess. There are multiple instances of Iron Man and Spider-Man fighting and Peter coming out on top, like in Amazing Spider-Man number 536, where he had some assistance from the Venom symbiote and actually exploded the Iron Man suit from the inside out. This was during the Civil War storyline where Tony believed that heroes needed to register their secret identities to be able to continue fighting. After this, however, Spidey does join Iron Man's team and reveals his identity as a result. This then leads to the One More Day storyline that some people believe to be the story No Way Home is inspired by. However, now Spidey takes on Iron Man as Peter Parker, using his organic webbing to string him up real good. There was also the Amazing Spider-Man number 588 fight where Tony shuts down the Iron Spider suit with a voice command, but Peter had built in a counter voice command and surprises Tony, managing to web him up and flee. The counter voice command, I guess, was also surprised. So that's pretty funny. And at 6, X-Men. This is certainly another interesting number, since Spider-Man had struggled against singular X-Men before, such as Nightcrawler and Wolverine. However, in the Secret Wars storyline, he took on the whole X-Men team at once and won. In Secret Wars number 3, Spider-Man was eavesdropping on the X-Men to learn their plans. When he heard meeting with Magneto among other things, he decided to drop in and say hi. I guess his body and powers just go into overdrive when he fights teams because, just like with the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man was easily able to dodge Wolverine, Nightcrawler, and more, even though he struggled one-on-one. He really wrecked them, webbing Colossus and Nightcrawler, hanging Rogue from the ceiling, and just obliterating the entire team. Even Wolverine pointed out that they were all lucky all he wanted was information and then an escape, because, quote, he really clobbered us. Halfway through and at number 5, Captain America. Within the pages of Civil War II, we expected a battle much like the last Civil War, with moral alignments being similar along with a couple deaths. However, we were shocked when a battle between heroes was interrupted. This vision that took us away from the action actually ended with an image of Miles Morales holding a dead Captain America. It seemed to be that Miles had also killed him, with blood dripping out of his hand and covering his suit. Would this really come to pass though? Civil War II was based on the belief in using the visions of an inhuman known as Ulysses to prevent disasters before they occurred, and heroes that felt taking action based on these prophecies were irresponsible, which is where this vision of Miles killing Cap came from, since these visions resulted in preventing multiple tragedies but also got War Machine and Hulk killed. But we did see an explanation play out in Secret Empire number 7, when a rage-filled Spider-Man nearly beat Captain America, who was remade by Hydra using the Cosmic Cube, to death after Cap had killed Black Widow. But that's all in the past. 5 years in the past to be exact. In it for Wonder Woman. Despite Marvel and DC always being viewed as rivals, they have had multiple occasions where they've had to come together. One such time was in the Superman and Spider-Man comic, which saw the two heroes join together to take on Doctor Doom. The Hulk and Wonder Woman also made an appearance in an attempt to satisfy more fans, and so we could hope that Superman and Hulk would dish it out. However, Doctor Doom very briefly got Spider-Man and Wonder Woman to fight because he said the two were enemies. And while Wonder Woman believed him, Spidey is from this universe, so he knows better than to take Doctor Doom at his word. So Diana tried to capture the bug in her net, which in this case is a giant lasso that makes you tell the truth. But Spider-Man ended up gaining the advantage by simply turning off the lights and letting his Spidey sense do the work, after dodging the lasso quite a bit, might I add. Spider-Man ended the fight by simply tapping her on her shoulder and basically saying, "See, I could kick right now, but I'm not. I'm one of the good guys." And that was enough for Diana to stand down, apparently. Getting close to the end in number 3, Hulk. Usually when Spidey fights someone stronger or more powerful than himself, he needs to think on his feet and outsmart them in some way. And you think that would be easy with the Hulk, given that he's just a giant brute with anger issues. But actually, that's not how this one played out at all. In True Believers Spider-Man vs. the Hulk number 1, Hulk challenged Spider-Man at a horrible time. At least, a horrible time for the Hulk. Since Spider-Man had just acquired a new set of abilities which increased his strength, speed, and gave him the ability to go airborne without webs. Spider-Man at this point was actually stronger than the Hulk, so he was trying to avoid a fact for lack of causing permanent damage. Unaliving him, if you will. But when Hulk started to endanger nearby kids, Spider-Man punched him and literally sent him into space. Since he was outside Earth's atmosphere, Spider-Man realized that he wasn't coming back down and flew up to help him, bringing him back down to Earth where he could breathe and not, freeze to death. It's pretty hardcore. Penultimately, in at number 2, Superboy. Marvel vs. DC is one of the best crossovers when looking at these lists. The fights from that crossover were decided by votes, so with Spider-Man being the most popular character Marvel has ever released, you can be sure that he'd end up winning against Superboy, despite the potentially unrealistic scenario that caused. However, it was explained away pretty easily when Superboy broke a water tower and flooded the roof they were fighting on. All it took after that was a conveniently placed high voltage box and some crashing to end the fight for Superboy. I don't know if Spider-Man was aware of this vulnerability, but either way, it went how it went. It also feels like I should mention that the Spider-Man fighting Superboy was Ben Reilly, the Spider-Man clone who goes on to become the Scarlet Spider. And DC fans don't seem to like it when you bring up this fight, with multiple users on a certain forum telling someone who mentioned it to jump on a bed of nails, which I have to say, I've heard better insults, come on. Finally, in at number 1, Silver Surfer. Sure, Hulk is strong and Superboy is part Kryptonian, but Silver Surfer is literally a cosmic being, a herald of Galactus. This man is nuts. And while yes, the fight with him may not really have been there overall, Spidey still technically came out on top, and that's what matters. In Silver Surfer number 14, the flying second place Emmy had a crossover encounter with Spider-Man while surfing over the city, and cause plot to make characters fight, a misunderstanding ensued. So Spidey immediately attacked the Silver Surfer. Let's be honest, on a good day, Surfer would usually just obliterate Spider-Man no problem, or just like flick him and he'd be fine. But on this occasion, the Surfer was actually already weak from a previous encounter, and on top of that, he just didn't want to fight. The Silver Surfer repeatedly tried to avoid battling Spider-Man and even saved Spidey from falling off a building, but Spider-Man wouldn't let up, knocking the Surfer off his board and taking the fight to him on the rooftops. Silver Surfer finally just got fed up with the violence and then made a decision to retreat, but first had to save a child who had taken his board. Come on, you could have at least given the kid a few minutes. Him saving the kid is what finally clues Spider-Man in that the Surfer was a good guy, but technically, Spidey wins by default. He didn't die, so that's a win to me. That's what matters. There we have it, friends, the top 10 most powerful superheroes who lost to Spider-Man. Which hero do you think Spider-Man could beat, and who do you think Spider-Man really should have lost against on this list? Be sure you let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I have been and shall remain Connor Monroe, and I'll see you in another video.